Monument dedication by the Daughters of the American Colonists, Washington State. Here, State Regent DIane Smith announces the presentation of colors by the newly formed color guard of the newly formed George Rogers Clark Chapter, Sons of the American Revolution. They operate out of Olympia, and President Art Dolan calls the commands.
Military colors! Forward! Forward!
Ms. Penny Janice, Washington State Society, Daughters of the American Colonists State Chaplain, will give the invocation.
Our Heavenly Father, as we gather here to celebrate an event important in the annals of Thurston County and the state of Washington, we praise you and thank you for the noble heritage which you have given us. We thank you especially for our inheritance of freedom, and with it, the right for women to vote. May we always be faithful to exercise this responsibility. We now look to the future and ask that through your grace, we would be endowed with fortitude and integrity, that we may stand firm for those principles which have made us free. And finally, grant that our every act may be worthy of those whose deeds we commemorate this day. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Penny.
Order! Order! Form! Present! Form!
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Della. Color guard, please post the colors.
DIane introduced the members of our society, Daughters of the American Colonists. You can get a sense of the audience and their seating outside the Littlerock Elementary School. She then went on to introduce visiting dignitaries, elected officials, and some of our special guests. Our first speaker was President Mary Armstrong, President of the National Society of Daughters of the American Colonists. She traveled from South Carolina to join us.
Thank you. Madam State Regent, thank you so much for inviting me to participate in your dedication. It is truly my honor and pleasure to be here. Since its early days, the National Society, Daughters of the American Colonists, has emphasized the importance of placing historical markers to draw attention to those sites, persons, and events which have played prominent roles in the history and development of our great nation. The National Society was founded in the spring of 1921, and by the mid-1920s, 2 markers had already been placed. With the encouragement of the National Society, the state organizations of DAC followed the example provided by the founding officers and members, and they soon began marking projects all throughout the country. Obviously, not all of the states have origins associated with the 13 original colonies, but the National Society has always urged its chapters and state societies to honor the landmarks of the country, regardless of the historical period, by studying and recording their stories. The Washington State Society was organized in 1940. Since that time, they have placed 14 markers and plaques throughout the state. Today's marker is the 3rd placed by Washington Daughters on the suffrage trail through Olympia. The underlying reason behind the importance given to the placement of historical markers by the Daughters of the American Colonists can be found in our very foundation, the object of the National Society. In it, we proudly stress our love for this country through patriotism, history, and education. We pledge to research history and deeds and to record and publish them and to commemorate these deeds. What better way to accomplish these lofty purposes than to seek out from our precious history those items which merit recognition and remembrance, and to memorialize them publicly and permanently through markers of prominence. The National Society continues today to stress the importance of locating and marking areas, but what of the importance of this marker? It pays tribute to 8 women who led the way for all women by voting. Because of this marker, every visitor to this area will have reasons to pause and have reason also to recall those heroic women who were the giants of their day. It is a worthy heritage and a worthy tribute to them. Madam State Regent, you have certainly picked an appropriate subject for your State Regent's project as we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the suffragettes and their struggle to gain the right for women to vote. Thank you.
And we heard about the National Project.
The National President's Project for this term is signage along a new entranceway for Poplar Forest, Thomas Jefferson's retreat near Lynchburg, Virginia, coupled with helping to fund an educational children's book about the history and nature of the surrounding area. I present to you a monetary gift from the Washington State Society for your project.
Thank you very much, and thank you all the daughters out there.
You just heard DIane present a gift to the National DAC President's Project. Next, DIane and Mary were joined by the chairman of National Awards, Gene Albertson. They presented Chuck Hornbuckle with a special Citizens Award for his tireless work preserving history in our local area, specifically helping with our monument project at Little Rock. Always a good sense of humor, Chuck had only one thing to say.
DIane, you may be a little bit biased because we have known you for a long time.
Yeah.
Thank you for including me in this, because Washington State, and particularly Thurston County, has a long, rich history of powerhouse women. There are so many points on the curve that illustrate this, so I want to share a few with you. And in a moment, you're going to hear from our chief historian in Washington, in the Secretary of State's office, John Hughes, who's going to share some really good perspective on today's events. Washington men really backed women getting the right to vote. In fact, if you go back to 1854, Seattle pioneer Arthur Denny proposed in the Territorial Assembly that all white females over the age of 18 should have the right to vote. That's how progressive and ahead of the curve we were here in Washington, including the men. In 1883, women had the right to vote, and the Territorial Supreme Court in 1887 said, you know, they made a mistake. They didn't mean for women to have the right to vote.
And with a very quick stroke of the pen, all they did is they wrote in the word male in their decision, that only males could have the right to vote in the Washington Territory. And I think it was Chief Justice Alexander who said that was judicial jujitsu. The court just, one stroke of the pen changed everything.
But I think one thing we can be really proud of here in Washington State is that the men in our state legislature in 1910 kind of got it, and the voters certainly got it with a constitutional amendment giving the women the right to vote in 1910. And Shauna Stevenson points out that we are credited as a state for re-energizing the women's suffrage movement, that it really jump-started it. And it still took 10 years to pass the 19th Amendment, but she credits, and many historians credit Washington's, 1910 being the fifth state to give women the right to vote as the thing that turned the tide and really got the momentum going. So here in Little Rock, we should be really proud of those courageous women who really changed things before all of that happened that I just talked about. Finally, I just have to share with you a fun story because many people haven't heard it. August 18th, as most of you probably know, is the day that the Tennessee legislature ratified the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. And it came down to a single vote by a young man named Harry T. Byrne. Now, Harry, if you know anything about the final days of the women's suffrage movement, it came down to Tennessee, and their Senate had voted to ratify the amendment, but their House was in a deadlock tie. In fact, they had a motion on the floor to table the amendment entirely, and it locked up in a 48-48 tie. And the way that they told how people were going to vote on the floor is the men wore a red rose on their lapel if they were against women's suffrage, and they wore a yellow rose on their lapel if they were for it. And Harry T. Byrne had a red rose on his lapel. So the motion was tabled. The motion to table was not passed, so they had to take a vote. They began doing the roll call. Harry Byrne was holding in one hand a letter from his mom that basically said, "You should vote for this, sweetie. I am your mother, and I'd like to vote." And on the other side, he had his lapel. And so they called his name, and he said, "I." And it was so shocking that they actually went to the next vote before anyone realized that at that moment, the 19th Amendment was passed. Of course, it was a huge uproar. The motion passed, and he got off the floor as quickly as possible. And all the reporters tried to track him down, and they finally did the next day, and he explained on the floor of the House that he thought it was better to follow the advice of his mother as a boy than it would be to incur her wrath. So that is in part why women today have the right to vote. And we're thankful for all of the women who fought so hard, like these powerhouse women here in Little Rock. And we're also thankful for all of the men who supported that effort as well. So with that, I hope that all of you are proud of what we're going to dedicate today. Thank you again for allowing me to be part of this wonderful celebration. And thank you to the Daughters of the Colonists for all this work, because this is important to mark our history, and you've done a great job of it here today. Thank you.
As the descendant of a colonist and a Revolutionary War patriot, I stand in awe of the 15 women who voted here 150 years ago. They were way ahead of the curve. The instigator of what unfolded at Grand Mound in Little Rock was the redoubtable Mary Olney Brown, a suffragist from patriot stock. It remained for Mary's equally enterprising sister, Charlotte Emily Olney French, to win over the poll watchers on June 6, 1870. Mary Olney Brown was a force of nature. She wrote letters to the editor to advance equal rights while also defending the rights of women of color. Such was her stature in the National Women's Suffrage Association that Mary was designated as an honorary vice president at the 1879 convention in St. Louis, together with Lucretia Mott, the equal rights icon. The first Olneys in America arrived from England in 1635. They soon ran afoul of the Massachusetts Bay Colony because they were Baptists. They were moved to Providence, and before long Thomas Olney, the patriarch, became active in civic affairs. He was named as one of the 10 assistants to the governor in the Royal Charter of 1663, a document which served as the basis for Rhode Island's government for nearly 2 centuries. Fast forward to the 1850s, the only sisters came west from Iowa by wagon, 3,000 miles in 6 months. Mary and her husband, a well-known abolitionist, lost one of their 5 children to illness along the way. So in a manner of speaking, the only sisters were Latter-day colonists as well as revolutionaries. By 1870, Mary was living in Olympia, frustrated at having been denied the right to vote the year before, despite an eloquent plea to the election judges, emphasizing that territorial law empowered all white American citizens to vote. Moreover, the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, ratified in 1868, declared all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. Charlotte, who lived at Grand Mound, was an energetic deputy to her sister. Here's Mary's version of what happened on that fateful day. Being a woman of energy and influence, Charlotte soon had the whole neighborhood interested as she set about organizing a regular campaign for suffrage. Her recruits prepared a mouth-watering picnic dinner at the schoolhouse where the election was to be held. The goal was to get the election officials in good humor, she wrote. My sister, being a good talker and well-informed in all the constitutional, judicial, and social phases of the question, as well as a good judge of human nature, was able to meet and parry every objection and give information where needed. When the voting was resumed, the women, my sister being the first, handed in their ballots. One lady, Mrs. Sargent, 72 years old, said she thanked the Lord that he had let her live until she could vote. She had often prayed to see the day, and now she was proud to cast her first ballot. The clincher in this already great story is the man, a noble suffragette, one might say, who was standing by to carry the news to Littlerock if the women at Grand Mound had succeeded in voting. They had, so off he galloped. Thrilled at the news, the women here were ushered into the schoolhouse, their choice of tickets furnished them, and all allowed to vote as American citizens. But that good news was tempered by what happened at the territorial capital. While the women of these 2 precincts were enjoying the exercise of their political rights, the women of Olympia were suffering the vexation of disappointment, Mary Brown wrote. In fits and starts, small victories, and bitter defeats, it would take another 40 years of persistent resilience before Washington women finally secured equal voting rights, most of them at least. The suffragist victory here in 1910 reignited the national movement, and Washington women were at the forefront of the final push for ratification of the 19th Amendment 100 years ago. In this historic, extraordinarily challenging election year, we should well remember what happened here in this little place with big consequences in 1870 as we cast our own ballots. It's a right, a privilege, and a responsibility rolled into one. Thank you.
To the students who have received the prizes, we really appreciated all the entries we received, and it means a lot to us, Daughters of the American Colonists, that you, in effect, have helped us celebrate this event in the year of the 19th Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. And thank you, students. Thank you, Mr. Spinney. And thank you, parents, as well. At this time, we will enjoy a musical selection.
Thank you, Diane. Here we are in an old-fashioned schoolroom. We've got a chalkboard. If you look back here, we've got a desk and chair. Now, can I get some help from Principal Spinney? And we can move forward.
Yeah, I'm the sheriff of this here school.
Thank you, Sheriff Spinney. I'm glad you rode your horse today, too, because a horse plays a very important part in this story. On June 6, 1870, in a time when women were barred from politics, 15 local women, as citizens, decided to vote in a general election. They had a secret plan. First, the ladies in Grand Mound fixed a picnic dinner, a surprise, at the schoolhouse where the election was held. Oh my goodness. We made fried chicken. And more fried chicken. And cookies. I'm not sure if we really made pizza. These are actually homemade buns. Whoa! And, of course, pies. Woo! All right, and that was fun. Directly after dinner, Mrs. French, Charlotte Emily Olney French, representing the ladies, explained to the judges her understanding of the law and the Constitution, territorial Constitution. She explained why it supported votes for women. Come on up here, voting judges. Let's see what you're made of. Welcome. Oh, here's the other judge. Thank you. Mrs. French, Charlotte, discussed the issues with the judges who had full stomachs. Wives will understand the philosophy of this. Charlotte gave good information and good answers to their questions. They presented their ballots and put them into the ballot box. Once he saw them starting to vote, he took off from Grand Mound all the way to Littlerock and announced at the top of his lungs, "They're voting, they're voting." And here he is. Wait a minute, do I hear real horse hoofs?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Oh, Sheriff, I meant a real horse,
Shucks.
Sheriff.
Wait a minute. I do see a real horse.
Oh my gosh.
I lost the real horse.
But,
I do see a real horse.
oh my gosh, look at that. Wow. Isn't he beautiful? And he's yelling, "They're voting. They're voting, they're voting." Oh, thank you so much. What a thrill. The moment the man rode into sight of the school, he swung his hat and screeched at the top of his voice, "They're voting, they're voting." The teams were ready. The teams of ladies were ready and instantly flying in every direction. Ladies of 1870 Little Rock, please stand. Do you want to vote? All right, then come forward, please.
They flew. There they are.
Okay, the ladies had their choice of ballots. They had to select, they just had two choices. Do you want yellow or green? Such a good job.
As we know, their rights were later taken away again, but they inspired the women of Washington Territory, and they even inspired Susan B. Anthony, who Mary Olney Brown met during one of Miss Anthony's tours of the Northwest. Finally, the 19th Amendment, which addressed women's right to vote, was passed, and now it's been 100 years. Huzzah! Reenactors, let's now bow and curtsy. Are you glad to have voted? Huzzah! We voted. We are citizens. Onward, ladies!
Certainly brings June 6, 1870 to life. Now, let's draw the ticket for the winner of Mr. Spinney's beautiful blue pony. Would you please draw, Chuck? You're an election judge. We can rely on you.
David Holmquist. David Holmquist is the winner of the horse. Come on down, David. It was your lucky day. All right, give David a hand.
Thank you, Mr. Spinney, and thank you, David. Color guard, please reposition the colors.
On your feet. Retire colors. Reposition. Forward.
Before we unveil the marker, Chuck Hornbuckle has a few words.
And we know that you have put a lot of work into this. We recognize the fact that the stone marker was left here about 13,000 years ago by a receding glacier. And in honor and appreciation of everything that you've done, we have a miniature ballot box for you. And inside there are chips from the glacier stone when they made the incisions.
Oh, Chuck! Chuck, there are enough stones here to share with everyone who made this possible. And it wasn't me. It was all the daughters here who have contributed to this being what I hope will turn out to be a success.
The stone was here 13,000 years ago. It will be here for the next 13,000 years.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you so much. I'd like now for everyone to please give their appreciation to our stone carvers who are here today, Shane Jewell and Macy Jewell. They both designed and inscribed the beautiful marker that you will soon see. I would also like to give special appreciation to Shanna Stevenson for fostering the idea and helping with the research of this project. Also, special thanks to the Votes for Women Centennial Grant and including the Washington State Historical Society, Karen Frazier, Sue Lean, and Shanna Stevenson for their backing and support. Thank you. There are many others who have helped with this project along the way, and they are acknowledged on the back of your program. Thank you all so much. It is now time to unveil the marker. Would Kim Wyman? Oh, there she is. Secretary of State of the State of Washington, and Mary Armstrong, National President of DAC. Please, I will please join you down there. It is now time to unveil the marker. Nothing is really ended until it is forgotten. Therefore, we, the Washington State Society, Daughters of the American Colonists, dedicate this marker in grateful significance of this act of voting at this place by these brave women of Grand Mound and Littlerock Black River precincts. May it help to keep alive an appreciation of our heritage. I present this marker to the people of Little Rock, the County of Thurston, and the State of Washington, as well as to the Littlerock Elementary School in the Tumwater School District. Would Principal Spinney please come forward to accept this marker?
I've asked Melissa Baird, our school board president, to join me as well as this. It is an honor to be here today in celebration of this historic event. In a time when social justice issues are at the forefront of our communities, we need to put down historical stakes to remind ourselves of our progress and to prod ourselves on to continue to make strides forward. Whether it be gender, race, orientation, or other dividing issues, we must continue to look inside of ourselves and press forward. As George Santayana wrote and has been quoted many times, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. This marker serves as one of those stakes to remember the past. Today is the culmination of 2 years of collaborative efforts between the ladies from the Daughters of the American Colonists in the Tumwater School District. It is my distinct pleasure to accept this marker as a historical stake of our past and a bridge to our future. On behalf of the staff, the students, and the families of Littlerock Elementary School and the Tumwater School District, we thank you for the honor of having this piece of history housed in our front yard. Melissa?
I was the board member who presented the resolution and accepted this project 2 years ago, and now I'm board president, and I'm forever indebted to the 15 women to be a female elected board member, and the fact that it's here in Tumwater is such an honor. So thank you so much for doing this project.
Well, it was a joy. It was a joy to work on this project, and we learned so much. We have others who stop at this special place. We learn about this important step in the trail of women getting the vote. Please stand a fable, as you are, for the benediction and for the retiring of the colors. Would Penny Janice please give the benediction?
We thank thee, O Lord, for the lessons silently taught by these manifestations of your power and presence everywhere. We see that out of this event, something of beauty and usefulness to mankind has been created. Bless this marker to all who pause in this place. Remind them of the importance of the voices of your children, and help make the message of this marker important in our annals of history. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Penny. Colgar?
The snare drum was employed to help retire the colors.
Thank you all for coming today. We appreciate your interest and support. Please enjoy the encore performance by the Rainier Brass Quintet, Sergeant DIane, trumpet, Specialist Kim, trumpet, Specialist Bailey, horn, Specialist Johnson, trombone. Is that a trombone? euphonium. Staff Sergeant Soros, tuba, and Staff Sergeant Loftsov, percussion. You are welcome to take an up-close and personal look at the Big Rock at Little Rock, and don't forget to vote. Thank you.
Here we have the unveiling of our boulder, the Big Rock, at Little Rock.